Okay, there.
Okay, I'm here with my teacher, Miss Nazareno, who I'm going to be interviewing and asking questions about how she got into her career. Miss Nazareno, why was teaching something you wanted to do?
Well, I always liked English, because that's something that I always valued. I loved reading books. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. In high school, for example, I didn't know what I was going to major in college. I had no direction in my life. And then I knew I wanted to become a teacher when I went to a trip after I graduated. And I went to visit my uncle in China. And in China, he teaches there. He's a teacher, and so he was like, well, I can't have you walking around by yourself, so you're gonna come with me to my school. So I already graduated at this point, but I decided that I wanted to, I just sat there and I was watching him teach. And then I decided that I wanted to do what he was doing. So that summer, I decided to go into my college declared as English education, marrying my love for English and then my new interest in teaching like him.
It's pretty interesting. How do you deal with complicated students? Like, we have our student in English class that gets up and walks around in the middle of you teaching. How do you deal with stuff like that?
So first thing, I have to remind myself that everyone has different needs. Sometimes people cannot sit still for a very long time. So if I see any student getting up and about, I usually check in why. I try to figure out like, oh, are you antsy? Is there anything I could do? If you're bored, if you need a break, if you need to stretch your legs, stretch it out. But then I always remind them of the expectation of what is happening in our classroom, which is usually an activity to help them learn. So if they need a break, if no one else is outside, I will be like, oh, you can take a break outside. Or you can go to your desk to finish off what you need to do and take your break later. So that's usually my approach. Sometimes it's a lot of times they need to get up.
Most of the time they spend their time up and walking around, right?
And so if that's happening a lot, we usually have a conversation, usually about why we are not getting up a lot, about not distracting others or not distracting ourselves because we have something we need to focus on. Now, if it's something that's constantly ongoing, that's a different conversation. But usually it stops right around there. Yeah.
Okay. And this is a big one. Do they pay you to grade when you're at home?
So this is something, teaching is something called a salary job. If you don't know the difference between salary and hourly, it means that you get a big sum of money, like at the end of the month or every 2 weeks, and you get a lot of money always. And that's if you meet the expectations, that you show up to your job, and then that you prepare for classes, and that you grade. So as long as you're doing those things, you get paid. Now, that means I could potentially do it all in my hours at work. However, I'm not able to all the time, so I have to grade it at home. Unfortunately, we don't get we don't get paid to do our work at home, but it's because it's one of those things that we have to get done in order to get paid. How do I describe this?
It's like meeting a quota.
Yes, it's like meeting a quota. Yes, that's exactly how it is. So we don't really get paid to grade at home, but I get paid to grade. That makes sense.
Oh yeah. And after a long day of work and dealing with students that constantly bug, what do you do to de-stress?
That's a good question. So I actually have something like an after-school routine. I get home. I actually get really stressed out, not by students, but by driving. I get a lot of like angry feelings on the road. And then so when I get home, I'm just like, "Argh." So I usually let out that energy by like doing a little bit of cleaning, or just like I sit for like a few minutes, And then, depending on the day, after that, I will either see my mom, I will either work out, or I will play video games. And that's like my way to de-stress.
Yes. I never thought of a teacher playing video games.
Yeah,
I had one more question for you, but you seem to have answered it in the beginning when you had told me that, or it was that most teachers start teaching because of a different teacher, and you answered that your uncle was the one that got you into teaching in his school in China, right? Or his classes China. So that pretty much wraps up our interview. Thank you for being my interview,
yeah, interview, yeah.
and this is really fun. Thank you.
Thank you for being my interviewer. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.